Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to There's No Business Like. I'm Katie Miller with Michigan Maven Creative Associates, and I am joined today by my co-host, Josh Benson.
Hey, it's Josh, rocking it from Marion, Illinois at the Marion Cultural and Civic Center.
And we have two fantastic guests with us in the studio today, Eric Olmscheid and Rashad Chambers. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello. Thanks for having us today.
Hi. So happy to join you.
All right. So our episode today is going to focus on the Tony Awards. They are coming up swiftly, and Josh and I are both, I think, the biggest theater nerds on the podcast team. So we are excited to have this conversation today about the Tony Awards and all the things that go into and behind the scenes of the Tonys. So let's go ahead and get started. I would love to hear a little bit about both of you and your relationship to the Tonys, and then we will dive into some questions. So Eric, do you want to start?
Thank you so very much for having me today. My name is Eric Omscheid. I'm the Executive Director of Wharton Center for Performing Arts at Michigan State University, and I have the opportunity to be a Tony Awards voter in my capacity as Executive Director. It's my second year as a Tony voter, and it's really an amazing responsibility, but one that I take with great seriousness and great pride, as it is a direct connection to our industry and the touring Broadway market. And we're thrilled to be part of that here at Wharton Center.
And Eric, how many Broadway shows do you bring into your venue in a season?
Each season, we bring somewhere between 8 to 10 Broadway tours to Wharton Center, typically full week equity or professional union tours. Occasionally, there are some split weeks or non-equity tours, but by and large, they are the first national tours. And it just depends on the season and the number of playing weeks. And some seasons have 6 or 7, some seasons have 8 or 9. The season that we're wrapping up right now, we actually have Hamilton in our building currently, the national tour of Hamilton, and then we close the season with the Book of Mormon in June. So it's a robust season here at Wharton Center right now.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being here. Rashad, what about you?
Hi, I'm Rashad Chambers. I am a Broadway producer. I am currently represented on Broadway with Purpose, a new play by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. And this is also my second year as a Tony voter. Eric and I enter into the same class. And I'm really excited to be able to shine a light onto Broadway and make a difference on who wins.
Well, and congratulations for the Tony noms for Purpose. That is so exciting.
Thank you.
And
Yeah, they
Rashad,
have
this isn't your first Tony nomination, though, correct?
I believe this is my 7th.
Okay. And so what were your other nominations and or wins?
Okay, so my first nomination was for Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. My second was for the revival of Betrayal with Tom Hiddleston. My third and first win was for The Inheritance. Then for Carolina Change. Then Top Dog Underdog, which was my second win. And I was also nominated for Fat Ham.
That is a lot of shows to keep track of.
Purpose is my 9th Broadway show, and 7 out of 10 have been nominated.
Wow.
My first show was American Son, and I was not eligible for Music Man because I was associate producer and not above the title.
Love it. Well, my first question is, what sort of magic that do you have that other Broadway producers probably want to steal? Because that's quite a track record.
You know, it's all subjective, but I tend to choose shows that I'm passionate about, that I feel can make a difference, and really the narrative and information within the show just speaks to me creatively. And I think art is subjective, and I've been very fortunate just to pick the right pieces.
Now, both of you have said that you came in the same class as Tony voters. So exactly how did you become a Tony voter? Eric, let's start with you.
So there's about 800 Tony voters, give or take, each year that are eligible voters for the Tony Awards. And it's comprised of people from the industry, folks from the industry that represent all areas of a Broadway production. and that includes producers like Rashad, presenters, folks on the road that are presenting the Broadway shows like myself, plus folks that represent Actors Equity Association, the directors, the all of the technical and creative elements all have members that are voters. So all told, it's about 800 folks, give or take each year. Um, Rashad and I are both members of an organization called the Broadway League, which is the trade association of the Broadway industry for both in New York City and on the road. And with that membership, we have to qualify for membership based on our role in the industry. With that membership comes the right and privilege to be a voter. So we were both associate members at the same time, then graduated to a full member, which comes with the ability to vote for the Tony Awards. And the Tonys, everyone thinks of them as, or knows them as the American Theater Wing Tony Award, because the American Theater Wing is the organization that started the Tony Awards, and then it is co-presented or presented in partnership with the Broadway League. So those two organizations work together behind the scenes to present the annual Tony Awards. And the Broadway League really administers all of the back office elements to make sure that all the voters are qualified and verified each year, works with the producers and general managers' offices to organize all of the voters and having access to the shows, and then administer the year-end voting process as well.
Now, Rashad, this is your second year as a Tony voter.
It
You've been a
is.
producer longer than that. And so where did that change come in, and how did you then become a Tony voter within that process?
So as a producer, your eligibility also is lined up with how much money you raise for a particular show and how much money you raise for consecutive shows. I automatically became eligible to be a voter because I was one of the lead producers of Fat Ham. And so that, I believe, gives me eligibility to be a voter for 6 years. And then if I lead another show, the eligibility sort of taps on to that period of time. So let's say, for example, this is my second year. In year 3, I'm also a lead producer. They'll add another 3 years onto the end of my 3 years of my first segment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But basically, you have to raise a certain amount of money as a producer to continue to be eligible to be a voter.
And what is that financial threshold that?
I need to fact check because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's $1 million.
Okay.
How do you feel about your eligibility being tied to a metric like that?
Oh, I'm fine with it. I think we should weed out the rough trade in our industry. But seriously, oftentimes, and people are finding loopholes to be a quote unquote producer. And there's a lot of groups happening now because shows are so expensive. So I think you should have to have more skin in the game and more at stake in order to be a voter. It's something that Eric and I take very seriously. And I think that you should, be somebody who has made significant contributions to a production. I mean, everyone makes a contribution, but, there are many people in our industry who invest or raise $25,000 in a group and then run around town saying that they're a Tony nominated producer. And I think that people should just have a bit more honesty and humility about what they've done. There's nothing wrong with raising money for a show, but giving people the illusion that you had more of a substantive role, I don't think is right. So I think this metric allows for people who really understand the craft of theater to be the ones making the decisions about who is voting and who is not.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into the voting process, let's just talk about some other basics. So who makes up the Tony nominating committee, and how do they go about choosing the nominated shows and individuals for each category?
The nominating committee is comprised of a wide variety of people within our industry. It can be producers, writers, directors, actors. They tend to be people who are invited based off of shows that they've done in the past couple of seasons and or the contributions that they've made to the industry. And I believe there's something closer to like 70 to 80 nominators. They go to see every show in the season, and they have to do that, I believe, before the cutoff in late April. And then they collectively vote for either 4 or 5 people in each category, and those 5 people who get the most votes are then the nominees. I believe the characteristics of each category is if there are 5 or more eligible people or productions in a category, sorry, 9 or more in a category, then 5 will become nominees. If there are 8 or less, then there will be 4 nominees
Okay.
in a category. And so that's pretty much how they're determined. If you see 6 in a category, that means that there was a tie. And then once those nominees come out, then all of the voters are, if they haven't already seen the show, are invited to see those shows. And then the 800 of us vote for each category.
Now, with the nominating committee, do they have to see those shows after they've formally opened, or can they see them during previews as well?
You usually get the invitation after the show opens, and or if it's late in the season, you may get it a little earlier when the show is frozen, and you may be able to come at the same time as press. But producers want you to see the finished product.
Yeah.
And as things are changing every day in previews, it doesn't give people a fair representation of the show. So you want people to come after it opens for the most part.
Yeah.
And so
makes
that
sense.
invitation is established by the producers, not necessarily by Broadway League or American Theater Wing.
That's correct.
Okay.
Interesting.
And just to clarify, Rashad, I just looked it up while you were speaking. This year, currently, there were 62 members of the nominating committee, and the nominating committee does serve a 3-year term. So they bring in about a third of those folks, rotate in and out every year, cycling through. So there is kind of a natural attrition to that group of folks.
Now, is the nominating committee, are they also voters or are they non-voters?
They're also voters.
Okay.
And the number fluctuates. Sometimes there are more, but then if people know that there's a particular season that they can't see as many shows as possible, they can recuse themselves so that, they're like, we won't be able to see all the shows, so we're not going to vote.
Sure. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
it is designed to be a subset of voters. So it is a kind of a smaller group of the voters, a little under 10%, which is a great representation of the whole industry, as Rashad was saying.
Yeah. So speaking of seeing all of the shows, there were 42 shows this season that were eligible to be nominated for the Tony Awards, compared to 36 last season for 2024, 38 for the 2023 Tonys, and I went back, 34 were eligible in 2019, the year before the pandemic. So 2 questions. First, Rashad, for you, what is this number of productions this season saying about the economics and artistry of Broadway in the 24-25 season? Because that's an insane amount of shows to have to see in a season, particularly compared to, past seasons.
It's an insane amount of shows to be produced and to open. I don't think that it says anything about artistry, to be honest. I do think it has a lot to do with economics. And I will speculate that because there were no shows for about 18 months in 20 to 21, there was a big bottleneck of shows that were in development and sort of waiting in the wings. And thank goodness that there are a lot of people in this country and in the world that want to support the arts and that are continuing to invest and produce so that we can have live theater. It is such a risky time, but people are still contributing, which is really amazing.
Eric, do you have any thoughts?
I think as Rashad was saying, it's a really risky, expensive proposition. We have seen, you can do a whole nother podcast, and Rashad could assemble folks that are on the producer side to talk about the rising costs of producing theater,
Yeah.
especially in the commercial space. But I think that we're seeing creative solutions to that. And so we're seeing more, a greater concentration of shows coming in for a planned shorter run, right? Sometimes with stars, sometimes not with stars, but they are coming in anticipating a 16, 20, 28-week run. That just means the churn of shows opening is a little higher.
Mhm.
And also, there is a little bit of a challenge with making sure audiences are coming back to the theater and coming with the frequency that we need them to sustain these longer runs as well. So we are in an interesting place that 42 performances or shows in one season is a high number. That doesn't take into account all the shows that are hanging out that are long running, right? The shows that opened last season that might still be running, or the shows that are running for multiple years.
Right.
So um, there's a lot of product available, and I think the hope that we all have collectively, I think on all sides of the equation, is that shows are successful, right? I don't think anyone wants a show not to be successful because it's not really a zero sum game. Because as soon as one show leaves the theater, another one comes in. So I think the industry, by and large, us as an entire Broadway ecosystem, are benefited from shows being successful artistically and financially at the box office, because that builds greater loyalty, greater fandom, but then also a greater product that can tour than the
Mhm.
United States in the subsequent years. So we all root for them. We want every show to be successful, and we want it to be a win for everyone involved.
Mhm. Do you think the number of shows this season has contributed to like a renewed excitement around Broadway, because there are some big titles with those limited runs, and it does seem like there's a wider variety of types of shows on stages this year? It seems like there's just been a lot more buzz around the Tony Awards and the Broadway world in this season than maybe the last few years.
I'll say yes with an asterisk. I think it is really exciting that there are um, new types of people coming to Broadway, but I think it has to be a cautionary tale
Mhm.
that we can't only be excited about Broadway when Denzel Washington and George Clooney are performing. We have to support new work. We have to take risks. Otherwise, my job as a producer is impossible. If I only can do a new revival or something that's based on a movie or a song catalog, we will never discover new writers. And I think that is very dangerous when people only support the shows that are shiny. And so my hope is that as creatives, and this is why I said I wasn't sure that your question really was about artistic integrity, it is about commerce, is that we have to find ways to continue to let artistic integrity flourish. We have to find ways to tap into new audiences and do development and community engagement so that people know that Broadway is for everyone.
Mhm.
You have certain shows that will be elitist and will have premium tickets that are more than some people make per week. And you have others that will have discounts galore that will enable other people to come. But I think that we really need to have honest conversations about what is being greenlit, what theater owners are giving space to and venues to, in order to really have the diversity and the types of shows that we all want to see.
There was there were statistics that Ken Davenport put out back in 2005 that was essentially 80% of Broadway over the 30 years prior to that had been revival or something that was an existing product that was just being brought to Broadway, whether it was a movie adaptation or, and so we're actually starting the process of compiling the last 30 years to current, and I have a feeling that it's actually going to be a little bit higher than that 80% that is not new work.
I would agree.
And it makes me wonder if part of our time right now, the time that we're living in, people are seeking comfort rather than exploration. And that comfort is what's shifting and skewing that further towards the known product versus the discovery of new musicals?
Yes, but I think there's a yes, but there, and maybe a yes, and if I want to use the tenets of improv, right? But the yes to that is we want comfort, and we're an experience culture right now, and we all want to make sure if we're investing our personal dollars that we're going to enjoy whatever performance or production or experience we're going to have. If that's a major concert, or if that's a Broadway production, or if that's a cinema experience. But if you look at the stats of the year, of the 42 shows, 14 of them are new musicals, 7 of them are musical revivals, 14 of them are new plays, 7 of them are play revivals. So we have a year that 50% of the shows that opened on Broadway are new and 50% are existing of some sorts. Um, I'm sorry, that's actually wrong. It's 28 new and only 14. So that's, almost, I'm sorry, 2/3 new, 1/3 revival. So I'm just really taken by that. Now, we can do the analysis of, well, how do the ticket sales follow that? What shows have staying power and long-term success? But just to Rashad's point about where producers are putting energy and supporting the creation of new work, I think is really important because the pipeline is more critical than ever. And on all fronts of the industry, we need new work continuing to represent where we are today and who we are as a society today. And that doesn't mean there's not space for great revivals and coming back and revisiting, because I think that's absolutely a piece of the equation. But supporting the new work and the development of new work, I think, is absolutely critical for the long term.
So let's shift a little bit back to the Tony process. Speaking of enjoying shows, this goes towards both of you. How has your viewing experience and experience in going to see shows, now that you're a Tony voter, how has that changed your perspective, and how does that change how you then sit and experience the shows that are in front of you?
My experience was destroyed long before I became a Tony voter. I think when you do this every single day, it is very difficult to just go and enjoy a show. I think every now and again you will find a gem that just allows you to disappear into the work and just be immersed in it for 2.5 hours. But I would say 9 times out of 10, you are fixing that show as you're watching it.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Yes. So for me, it wasn't about being a Tony voter. It's just about being a producer and always experiencing new work. Every single day I'm either reading a script or going to a reading or a workshop or seeing a show off Broadway or on Broadway. And that does really take over how you experience a show, unfortunately.
Now, Eric,
I would say
not being in the producer role, it's a little bit different for you, but still, how is and I know that you were a passionate lover of Broadway and musical theater prior to becoming a voter. So, how has that changed your view and your experience going to the shows?
for me, I no longer have the ability to go in and just enjoy it at face value, right? Everyone around me expects me to have some sort of opinion, good, bad, or otherwise, about every element of every show, and they want to talk about it. And I take that piece of my role here at Wharton Center as the curator of our Broadway series very seriously, right? Because I'm first and foremost thinking about what might tour in the subsequent seasons. And so I'm thinking about who is the audience for this show, who's in the auditorium that day, how will this show read in this market versus other markets, but then also just looking at every piece of the artistry that's on stage. And I don't know if I'd go as far as Rashad and say it was destroyed, because I still have a great love of it, in the sense that I find just such an eagerness to see every show. But it comes with the kind of responsibility of having an opinion about everything. And gone are the days of just kind of mindlessly enjoying a piece of theater. And I find that when I am seeing a show on Broadway or in any theater setting. but I still love it. I still love what we do, the magic that we make every day in the theater, watching audiences discover something new or have some sort of personal connection to the work is just really so special.
So, being a voter, how do you then keep track of your perceptions of the shows and all of the different aspects of the shows that you're going to have to vote on? Are you like Katie, where you're going to have a massive spreadsheet that you're populating after each show? Or is there some type of journaling? How do you then keep track of your opinions, your experiences, and your feelings about each show that you go and attend?
For me, it's
I will
all in my
say,
mind.
wow,
Sorry,
really, Rashad? All in your mind?
it's all in my mind.
That would have been my approach as well. I would have written nothing down.
Not a thing.
Yep.
So
So
even for
I,
something that you have to see, it could be 10 or 12 months that between seeing a first show of the season and then actually voting, everything's locked up here.
Everything is in my mind, and we also get lots of Tony swag at this time of year with books and CDs and memorabilia. But for the most part, I make a decision kind of early on of how something moved me or how I felt about it, either visually or what I've learned. And then, there may come a time where I narrow it down to two and really have to go back and think, okay, I really love both of these shows. Which one had the better sound, or which one do I think had the better lighting? But I definitely do not take any notes or keep a spreadsheet.
so I will say my process is evolving because the first year I did it last year, I almost was doing like an evaluation of every show. And when you have to see 40 plus shows, and for me as an out of town voter, every time I travel into New York, I'm seeing somewhere between 5 and 8 shows within a week. So I travel in and I see as much as I possibly can in back to back days, as many 2 show days as I can get in. So in some ways, notes are critical, but I use more of a journaling method now where I jot down things that I think were exceptional or outstanding to recall my experience or feeling that I was having. Much like Rashad was saying, it's about the feeling and comparing who else is in that category even before you know what nominations may be out there. So I use more of a journaling technique just to help jog my memory about how I felt in that moment because I'm seeing so many shows so close together. I have found that that's a helpful tool for me. But I stopped doing kind of a full kind of journaling
Right.
evaluation because that was
Right.
just way too much time,
Yeah.
um, and than what I was able to dedicate. But as Rashad was saying as well, there is a kind of natural um, evaluation you're able to do as you see a show, right? So you're seeing this performance, and then a week later, you're seeing another lead performer, and you're going, okay, do they interpret that in a way that we think is better or more exceptional than this person? So you start narrowing that field, and I kind of have 2 or 3 in every category that I think are my top picks before the nominations even come out. And then once the nominations came out, I was like, okay, great. Like most of mine align. Like
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense to me. And so I just the other day started, taking the ballot and starting to kind of make my choices before finalizing in the next week and a half.
Our viewing experiences are very different. Now I'm seeing more shows at a time because I'm behind, but generally I only see a show or two a week. So if I were doing 5 or 8 at a time, maybe my process would be different.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely be more miserable. But I think spacing it out allows me to, really um, keep it here in my mind and
Yeah.
think about it more. And now the ones that I'm seeing, like next week, I will probably see 4 shows. And, but, we're in the final stretch. We're,
Yeah.
we're voting in about 10 to 12 days.
Does that feel
And I'm
like a
done
lot
for the
of
record. I'm
what
done
was
for the
that?
record.
Oh, you're
I've seen them
done?
all. I'm done for the
Okay.
record. Yep.
Does it feel like a lot of pressure when you're staring at that ballot and you're making those final decisions? Because and I have a question about this for you, Rashad, a little bit later. But like a Tony nom and an award can have an effect, right, on the longevity of a show or the career of a playwright. Like, does that feel like a lot of pressure?
Not for me. I'm one of 800. So I pick the things that I believe in and that I like. There are certainly some shows that need the win to sustain their run, but I I can't take that on.
Hmm.
It's everybody has their collective opinions on what is the best, and that's why I said before, art is subjective. In the best play race, all five shows are completely different. So it's like evaluating an apple, an orange, a lemon, a nectarine, and a grape. Like, which do you prefer in that particular moment, and what speaks to you the most?
Eric, what about you? Do you feel any pressure?
I don't, I would say not in the like, um, not really. I feel a responsibility, right,
Hmm.
to be a solid, fair voter and voting with my artistic mind in at hand rather than what I think will sell or what I think needs the Tony Award to be successful. I think there's a lot of narrative around, oh, it was people voted in that way because they felt like it needed it to be successful or they needed it to get on tour or the only reason why they voted for that is because they like that person. And I really feel there's a responsibility of the voters to vote for the artistic quality, because at the end of the day, it's about the integrity of the work that we're celebrating. And the reality is there is no way to know how our 800 of us are all going to vote. So it is truly a democratic process in the way that we all have an equal voice in that
Yeah.
in that selection.
Yeah. Which feels different from other awards that we hand out in the entertainment industry in this country. It feels more, not honest is not the right word, but like you said, more democratic. And it feels like Tony voters do feel that weight of responsibility, like you said. So it feels different than like the Emmys or the Oscars, for instance.
And I think one of the other big differences that a question that I get all the time is that do we, what's eligible and how do you see it? And like we all have to see the work in the theater in New York City on Broadway, right? Unlike the film and television world where screeners are sent out
Hmm.
now digitally and sent out via links for the film and television world, our world is really about seeing the work in the theater with
Yeah.
the original
Yeah.
cast. And that is a totally different scenario than a lot of the other awards in the entertainment space. And, making sure that we are there, showing up and being present in that very moment together. And the experience that I might see one day is could be
Yeah.
wildly different than what Rashad experiences the
Yeah.
following week, depending on who else is in the audience. Do they have a great show? Do they not have a good show? So there is a level of ephemeralness to our world that does seep into even the viewing process of voters.
Absolutely. There are two shows in the same category, which will remain nameless. One I absolutely hated, and other people love, and there's one that everybody else hates that I love. So we'll
Yeah.
see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's there. I'm sure there are some aspects, obviously, of personal taste, right, and experience in the
For
field, and those
sure.
sorts of things too. But I think Eric, your point about the ephemeralness and sort of like that live nature of what you are watching, we're all experiencing together, does feel very different and special in a way. So
It also depends on when you see it too. If you
yeah.
see it right after opening versus 3 months later when actors have really gotten into their body and they've found deeper nuggets in the role,
Yeah.
you are going to see a different performance. So that definitely makes a difference, which is why a lot of the shows that open in the fall, they will send a re-invitation to voters if their show is still around and their show is nominated, so that people can experience it again, especially for those who are on the fence about who they're voting for.
Hmm. To
Yeah,
that
I just
point.
recently last week went and back and saw a show that I saw back in November because I wanted to revisit it because it was lauded with several nominations that I wanted to make sure I revisited
Mhm.
because I saw it right after it opened. And to Rashad's point, it was a wildly different experience. And I'm really glad that I resaw it with a fresh set of eyes.
That's great. So another question sort of related to your comment about swag, Rashad. You mentioned that, you're getting a lot of swag now and CDs and pamphlets and books and whatever else. I was thinking about this in regards to like the Emmys or the Oscars. What is the media campaign like around the Tony nominations? So there's a ton of press that happens when the noms come out, and then lots of interviews and videos and like that sort of thing. So as a producer, what is that experience like for you, or what are you thinking about in terms of a show that you have nominated? And then Eric, as someone who is in the Midwest and a presenter, do you read any of that press or what's your approach to press after the nominations come out?
Should I start?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think as a producer, we're trying to get our, depending on who's nominated, our writer, director, performers, designers, as much visibility as possible. So that could be, interviews, that could be puff pieces, that could be articles, just really being strategic with our press team, but also not overwhelming people because they still do have to do 8 shows a week. So it's about being strategic. It's about finding those right outlets. But at the end of the day, the work is what speaks for itself. So yes, you can remind people of it, but if they didn't like the show, they didn't like the show. It doesn't matter how much you do. But we are trying to just remind people. When I was doing Fat Ham, we, as part of our sort of swag, we gave out the play and we also gave out barbecue sauce. So it was, here are the words, but then here's also something fun to remind you of the world of the show.
Cool. That's a great approach. I love that.
As Rashad was saying, I think a lot of it's about the recall and the press clippings and the information that we're in right now, the phase that we're in this very moment. For voters to receive that information is really about the memory recall, because it does not going to change my mind if I liked someone's performance or liked a show or not, but it will remind me how I felt in that moment and all the elements that are part of the consideration. Because we have to remember that most people are thinking about the principal or lead performers and the overall best musical, best play categories, right? But there's a lot of technical and creative categories that you're thinking about and evaluating: lighting, scenic, projections, sound, all those other elements, costumes, hair, makeup, all those other elements that are part of the whole piece of it. And when we're evaluating a best play or best musical, we have to be looking at every bit of that, not just the principal performances.
In awards like the Grammys and other awards, there's a lot of backroom deal making behind the scenes in like, hey, well, in literally lobbying for votes. Is that as prevalent in the Tonys? Or is
Yes.
the Tonys a much more straightforward process?
Nothing is straightforward.
Okay.
Everything is about who you know as much as how good the work is. And there is campaigning for sure. We had just had an entire week of it last week with the Spring Road Conference, which is a big conference with all of the producers, presenters, general managers from all around the country. And each day in the conference, there were creative conversations. There were happy hours sponsored by this show. There were after show get-together sponsored by another show. And of course, it is about the celebration of theater, but it's also about making sure we are here and we want your vote.
Enjoy this old-fashioned in the name of your vote for our show. Thank you very much.
Specialty cocktails, absolutely. Trotting those performers out to mix and mingle.
It's such an interesting conundrum, because does that change how we feel about a show? I'm not certain. Like, as a voter, does that change how I feel about an actor in that role or what may have happened on stage that night? But there is definitely a campaign, an awareness campaign, to make sure that nothing is forgotten.
Rashad, as a producer, whenever you're nominated and or whenever it wins, what does that mean from a business perspective for that show, for its longevity, for its touring, for merchandise, for any aspect of it?
It can open up a world of possibilities. First and foremost, if you're blessed enough for your show to still be running, you will likely see an uptick in sales, especially if you are a musical. I remember when we were doing Ain't Too Proud, we were the first performance of the evening of the telecast, and I believe we had about $500,000 in sales within the first 2 hours of that performance. So it
Wow.
definitely makes a big difference. With Purpose, we were nominated for 6 Tony Awards, and then 4 days later, we won a Pulitzer. And there was an increase in ticket sales by $100,000 from one week to the next.
Mhm.
So it definitely makes a difference. For some shows, it may not. If they don't pick the right song to showcase, everyone tries to be strategic and putting out their best number. You have to think about what works out of context of your show. So you'll see certain productions may do a medley of some sort as opposed to just one number. But it definitely enhances or has the potential to enhance box office, and it also can dictate if your show has the possibility of touring. Being nominated or winning will definitely amplify the message, and I believe will make it more enticing to presenters, especially if you don't have the cachet of a big movie title or something else that really sells the show.
The telecast really does help the folks who are not as keen on what's happening on Broadway in every moment and every minute or every season, share what's happening and kind of a highlight reel in a way. Because so many of our subscribers here at Wharton Center find out their information through the Tony Awards, through the nominations, through the telecast itself, and the subsequent press that kind of really is the vehicle behind it all. Cynically, we might think of the Tony Awards as just a giant marketing machine, right? It is really about putting a spotlight on the industry and the field. And so we really need that as a communications tool for our audiences as well, because it directly connects to people being excited about what's happening on tour, regardless if it wins or not. That's a whole other conversation. If the Tony win or not drives the actual sale at the end of the day for tour markets, but it definitely raises awareness of the shows and it provides context for knowing what's coming off of Broadway.
Yeah. And
And that
then
marketing language alone, Tony Award winner,
Tony nominated. Yeah. It's
any
like,
of it is beauty to any marketing firm.
let's talk about the actual ceremony. So we were just talking about sort of it maybe being a marketing machine or that sort of thing, but I can only imagine what it's like to actually be in the room. So what is it like to be in the room on awards night, to be surrounded by the crowd, to see the performances, and then to hear the name of your work called out loud over the loudspeaker? Yeah, what is that experience like?
It's pretty magical. First and foremost, it's a celebration of theater. And it shines a light onto our industry and allows so many people around the country and the world to see the best of theater. I mean, Broadway is the pinnacle of theater, regardless of whether you like a show or not. That is what people look as the gold standard. And so to have the opportunity to be in the room and to celebrate that is truly amazing. I've been twice now, and I think it's just an amazing opportunity to be with your peers and to see and celebrate together. The first time I went was when Ain't Too Proud was nominated, and it was just fun to be in the room. And then my second time going was when I was a nominee for both Fat Ham and Top Dog Underdog. And so to be able to be there representing two shows was really special. And I don't know who loves me at the Broadway League, but I had the most amazing seat ever. I was sitting in front of Tom Stoppard, and I got lots of camera time, and then we won Best Revival of a Play. So I got to go on stage with my lovely, lovely friends and colleagues who I absolutely adored working on that show with them for about a year to pick up this prize. And that was just such a dream come true.
Now, are you able to actually leave with the Tony in hand that night, or
Me
or does the statue come
personally,
later?
no. If you so they give out as a producer, they give out two statues for each production. So if you have one lead producer, if you have four lead producers, you have two. So ours went to David Stone, who was our lead producer, and Susan Laurie Parks, who's the writer. And then after the ceremony, I was able to order mine, which cost $3,000 for those listening. You get two for free, and then everybody else has to buy one. It was certainly worth it for that production. I did not get one for the inheritance because I did not think that it was worth it. But yes, I got it. I think at the end of July. That's engraved. It has my name on it. It has the category. It has the year. And so, yes, I got it probably like 7 weeks later.
And where do you keep your Tony Award? Like where do they live in your house or office?
I have a wonderful credenza behind my sofa, and it lives there with other memories.
Lovely.
It's
All right,
amazing.
friends. I think we are coming to the end of our time. So we are going to do some Tony Award predictions if we are ready for it.
Ooh.
I know. It's quite a season. Like we said, 42 shows. The nominations are sort of all over the place this season. There are some that are headlining with 10 nominations each, multiple noms, but we're going to just do 4 categories. So we're going to talk about Best Musical, Best Revival of a Musical, Best Revival of a Play. We're going to skip over Best Play because Rashad is nominated and we don't want to put Eric on the hot seat there. And because I'm a dancer and choreographer, we're going to add in Best Choreography just to make me happy.
Oh.
Okay.
And the
I
best
better pull up the nominees then.
I'm going to read them to you.
I can tell
Okay.
you.
Okay, so this is who you think is going to win, not necessarily who you voted for or your preference.
And just Katie doesn't know this yet, but I'm also taking part in this.
Oh,
Katie's
okay, there
hosting.
you go. All right, so
Oh,
the three
okay.
of you. I need your predictions of who you think is going to win, not necessarily who
Not
you
who we're
voted
voting for. Just to
Not
clarify
who
for
you're
listeners,
voting
this
for.
is not who we're voting for. This is who we think
Nope.
is going to win.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
All right, Best Musical. The nominees are Buena Vista Social Club, Dead Outlaw, Death Becomes Her, Maybe Happy Ending, and Operation Mincemeat.
Maybe happy ending.
I agree with maybe happy ending.
I'm also going maybe happy ending.
It's not a surprise. It's Josh's and I's favorite show of the entire, favorite musical of the season. So we're both huge stans. Okay. Best Revival of a Musical. Floyd Collins, Gypsy, Pirates, the Penzance Musical, Sunset Boulevard.
I think Sunset Boulevard.
This is a tough one. I do think it's between Sunset and Gypsy, but I'm gonna also say Sunset Boulevard. But Floyd Collins is a dark horse.
It is.
Kind of came out of nowhere.
Sunset as an overall production wasn't my favorite, but I also think that it's probably gonna take the category.
Okay. Best Revival of a Play. Eureka Day, Our Town, Romeo and Juliet, Yellowface.
Yellowface.
Eureka Day.
Yellowface.
Okay. All right. We're split there. All right. And then the wild card category, Best Choreography. Smash, Gypsy, Death Becomes Her, Boop the Musical, or Buena Vista Social Club.
Buena Vista Social Club.
Ooh. I probably Buena Vista Social Club, possibly Boop. Jerry Mitchell knows how to build a production number as well.
I was gonna go with Boop the musical.
Yeah. I saw the clip just the other day of the black and white costumes turning into the color like that was pretty creative. So I was like, that's very interesting. All right, so these are our predictions here on There's No Business Like from Josh and our guests. We will see what happens during the actual Tony ceremony. So Eric and Rashad, thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you today. Thanks for indulging Josh and I in our love for the Tonys and making time to be here on There's No Business Like.
Thanks for shining a light on the theater and the Tonys. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Brian Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh, wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.